People very often say, I'm a Quebecer. Well, I was born and raised in Quebec. My parents were born and raised in Quebec. Je parle français presque couramment. But I'm not a Quebecer, I'm a Montrealer. There's a heap of a difference between each region of Quebec. Montreal, the Saguenay area, the Estrie, the Laurentians. Well, Montreal, cosmopolitan city that has always been remarkable in how bilingual it was. Long before bilingualism was forced on anyone and then taken away. Montreal has become one of the least bilingual cities that you're going to find in terms of French-speaking people who can no longer speak English. Well, maybe to the Parti Québécois and the Liberals that's a good deal. But to someone who wants to make a life outside of Quebec, in this incredible country, this magnificent continent, they're screwed. A couple of years ago, I ran for office, federal office in this riding here, this area. Nothing to do with language, nothing to do with culture, everything to do with the fact that I'm just pissed off about the way our governments treat us. We're not a cookie jar for them to grab money and do with it what they want. I will never vote for anyone who's going to tell me how to live my personal life, but that seems to be what the politicians like to do the most. I remember the greatest generation ever, my parents. Your parents, maybe your grandparents, maybe yourselves, who understood what individual rights and freedoms were all about. And that's before we had a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They understood their obligation to country, to their church or synagogue, if they were believers, to their families, to their communities. That's all gone. So I ran for office. I wanted to make a difference. I probably spent more money that I was able to raise from the community than all the other candidates combined. It was a massive campaign. And I went to all the debates. And anyone who knows me knows that I say exactly what I think. I mean what I say, and I'm not two-faced. And I've been called everything for it under the sun. The debates were very important. One debate that I really wanted to go to was the French language debate, the breakfast. Not only didn't I go, I wasn't invited. And I was the only bilingual person in that campaign. So you had this all-candidates meeting amongst Ontario or local francophones held in English. And they call me a racist. I'm tired. I'm fed up. I left Quebec to get away from this kind of crap. I would never, in a million years, condone or accept a Bill 101 for Ontario against the French speakers, as this entire country closes its eyes to against English speakers in Quebec. I would never allow anyone in this province or anywhere in this country to tell French-speaking people they can't use their language or how they can use their language. Except for the assholes in this province who've done just that. The unrestricted use of the French language is now against the law in Ontario. You cannot put up a sign in the French language only in Ontario. And that doesn't bother you. What the hell happened? We have school buses in Alexandria where the French parents, the teachers, and the school board kicked off the English kids. They don't want English kids on their school buses. What's the definition of racism? We have a hospital in Cornwall, a publicly funded hospital, your money and mine, where most of you can't go because it's only available to French speakers. Imagine a publicly funded French-only healthcare center. It made the national news for 10 seconds until McGinty turned around and decided, well, we'll balance it off by having an English native only. And we vote for these people. I'm tired, I'm fed up, and I'm angry. I have never in my life had a racist bone in my body, but it's getting very, very hard. We are, in Ontario, 96% of the population. Yet you can't get a job now, working in many places in Cornwall, unless you can pass a French proficiency exam, so that the French speakers get these jobs and they spend their day speaking in English. You can't get a job in the city of Ottawa unless you can pass a French proficiency exam. So they import a couple of thousand Quebecois every day for jobs in Ottawa, where the people who live in Ottawa and pay their taxes can't get a job in their own city. But it's okay, we're bringing in a couple of thousand Quebecois who laugh in our face anyways, because we're the cookie jar. A recent study came out, just I think the last month or two, the French-speaking population in British Columbia, I think it's 1%, and I'm sure it's not even. But the figures I heard, and I know this because we do business, or we're doing business with a large segment of the federal population that was transferred entirely to BC, which was tourism. 42% of the federal civil servants in BC are French. Less than 1% of the population is English. I have business to do in Ottawa from time to time with Parliament Hill. So I go into the parliamentary restaurant. It's very nice. All the politicians sit there, the senators. Hey, they got a good life. Everyone who works in that restaurant, waiters, waitresses, maître d', French. Excuse me? English people don't want to work in a restaurant. Everyone who works in security, security's around every block now in the House of Commons, whether it's in the Senate, whether it's in the MP's buildings. I'm in all of them. No Anglos. I'm dealing with the Heritage Foundation who controls Parliament Hill, the actual hill. I'm speaking to people, not one of whom is English. Call the number, you're answered in French. Sometimes the voice message is only in French. Si vous parlez français, c'est pas grand-chose. If you don't, well, try to guess what they're saying. Quebec just elected a separatist government, which isn't that much different from the Liberal Party in Quebec. Remember, the first language law, that bit that was directed directly against the English-speaking community wasn't from the Parti Québécois. They didn't exist. It came from Bourassa, Bill 22. Bill 22 it's the foundation of Bill 101. To the people who've heard me speak before, my wife and I lived with armed bodyguards for years, in out of our pockets. And couldn't go to the hairdresser without somebody going beside her with her, who was carrying a gun. For years. Why? Because I wanted to be an equal and visible citizen. Not because I wanted to take away rights from somebody else, not because I was against bilingualism, but because I don't think any government has the right to tell me that I have to be half as visible or absolutely invisible. Let me get rid of a couple of myths for you. In Quebec, it is against the law to have any English whatsoever on a moving vehicle. So if you're a plumber and you have your van, it's plumerie et chauffage, but not plumbing and heating. You can't have any English whatsoever on a billboard that's not on your property. So if you're here and across the street, a building's owned by your parents, you can't put a sign on their building with any English on it whatsoever because it's off your property, off your business property. And it goes on and on and on. Quebec is bankrupt. They are so bankrupt, they're in such a deep hole with an extension ladder they couldn't see out the top. And what are they spending money on? More language police. Excuse me. Hello? I understand you're one of the people who didn't want me to come to that debate, the all candidates debate. Is that true? I don't know.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
No?
I'm for both languages.
The reality,
I
certainly.
spent half my life in both
Do you think, and I don't want to debate with you, but do you really think that the French language be made illegal in Russell Township?
that it should be made illegal?
Yes.
Absolutely not.
You realize that it is, though?
That it is to have only one language on the signs?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So if you want to have a
I don't
French,
agree with that.
I'm sorry?
I don't agree with that law that they have. I don't agree with that law.
Then I apologize if I directed any of my vitriol towards you.
Listen, if you, no problems.
You know, you always hear this cliche, my best friend is. If I need help at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to dial a whole bunch of digits. A guy's going to wake up with a very heavy French accent, and I'm going to say, Frank, I need, and before I can tell him what I need, he'll be in his truck on the way over. My wife and I live amongst French-speaking people. When we go out to restaurants or languages, whatever someone's speaking, we moved from Montreal to this area so we'd still be in a multicultural area. To our life, multicultural is English and French, and now, of course, we introduce the Scottish and others. And I'm saying, why did we move? Why did we move if this is the kind of attitude so many of our French neighbors have? The question is it really so many of our French neighbors, or is it just a handful of language bigots? I would never kick someone else's kid off the bus because of the language they speak. I would never deny anyone the right to any kind of health care, no matter what, because of the language they speak. There are programs now running in Montreal that I started that feed 6,000 school children hot meals every day. These are poor kids, 90% of whom are French. You think I care what language they speak, or their culture, their religion, their culture, their traditions? I don't give a damn. So now I come to Ontario to find out that there's a tribe few weeks ago, we passed this resolution in South Stormont, in this very room. Deputy Mayor of South Stormont, Tammy, sitting there, who helped steer this, which we all owe Tammy Hart a great deal. The headlines in the papers, English and French, specifically the French papers, were, "It's irrelevant." Well, what's irrelevant? We passed a bylaw, a resolution, guaranteeing freedom of expression for all people, regardless of your language. So you can put any language you want on your site. People want to come into your store? Great. People don't want to come into your store? Great. It's your choice. Well, that choice has been taken away from us. In Russell, La Nation, Clarence Rockland, and Castleman, there is no choice. And because we went to court and we lost in standing in front of a French activist judge who should have recused herself, it became the law. We went to the Court of Appeals. We stood in front of 3 judges who were demanded to be bilingual, even though the case was heard entirely in English. And when asked if Jean-Serge Brisson and I would have a problem if it was held in French, no. It was heard entirely in English, but they demanded a bilingual group of judges because there would be a proclivity towards accepting and allowing a signed bylaw that violates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. All the judges, from Metivier at Superior Court to the Court of Appeal, every judge said that the Russell Township bylaw violates freedom of expression. But it's the right thing to do. So now we've made application to go to the Supreme Court of Canada to have this reversed. They might not even accept to hear this case. If they do, are we going to have the same nonsense that it's the right thing to do to take away someone's freedom of expression? For what purpose? On November the 13th, I'm going to back up. On November the 10th, Ann and I are going to CFB Trenton, where we're going to pay honor to our fallen heroes, our Canadian heroes. These are men, and I believe one woman, who were killed in action. I was very, very fortunate to be able to contribute to this memorial, financially and psychologically. I financed a commemoration prior to the sod turning and everything else, where we threw a big barbecue for everybody who wanted to come. And this was part of that motorcycle group I'm a member of. And at the sod turning, it was very hard not to cry. These are our men and women who are fighting for other people's freedom, while we're too scared in our own country to stand up for our own. The bullets or the IEDs or whatever killed our soldiers, you think they discriminated or asked if they were French or English? You think I did? So after many long years of putting this memorial together, there's this grand opening on the 10th. And Ann and I have been blessed to be there, to be invited to be there. On the 11th, let me tell you what I do on the 11th. My dad was an incredibly decorated World War II veteran. My mother also served during the Second World War. And there wasn't a time in my life that I don't remember going downtown in Montreal and watching him march with all the other old folk who fought for our freedom. But he's gone now, 18 years. But I still go, except a couple of years ago. A very strange thing happened. Quebec doesn't really recognize November the 11th. Bouchard made it Quebec Citizenship Week. There is no cenotaph in downtown Montreal where the people gather to pay tribute to our heroes, to our World War I, our World War II, our Korean, all the wars that Canada fought in. So they moved it over to McGill University, where the backdrop are kids smoking dope on the grass, playing football, and I kid you not, and a whole crush of people standing like this, where there's a band and speeches that you can't really hear anyways, because in Quebec, during the referendum in 1995, if you wore a poppy, they wouldn't let you vote. It was an outrage. The radio stations were going nuts. People going to vote like me, wearing a poppy.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
I've never heard you talk like that.
I'm not kidding.
That's true. Oh, it's true.
We were not allowed to vote.
That's awesome.
But people like me don't lie down. People like me who drive my car through the damn window if I have to vote for my country. And Bouchard took to the airwaves and says, no, 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 il papi c'est assez. It's not a symbol of Canada. It's okay. So what I do now, because there's no real parade in Montreal any longer, Anne and I put on a poppy beginning of November. I'm very impressed that people here are wearing poppies. And I wear that poppy until the 11th. And we did this when folks marched down Place de Canada as well. I wear my poppy, go to the cemetery where my parents are buried, where there is a cenotaph. And I stand there with a half dozen other people. I have taps on my iPhone. And at the correct time, we play taps. We cry again. I'm going to back up again a little bit. On Father's Day, when I go to the cemetery, I plant a Canadian flag just in front of the headstone where both of my parents are buried. The reason I do that is because on November 11th, I want to give my dad the poppy that I wore in his honor and memory. So as soon as we're finished with the cenotaph, Anne and I go to my dad and mom's funeral plot, I take off the poppy, I put it onto the flag, and it stays there for the whole year until I repeat the process on the next November the 11th. On November the 13th, South Glengarry is going to be introducing, I'm going to be reading the same resolution that South Stormont passed a few weeks ago, guaranteeing that anyone in South Glengarry who wishes to put up a sign in either language, French, English, or Swahili, will be able to do so, according to our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In South Glengarry, we sent out a mailing to every house in the township. I'm sorry, South Stormont. Every house in the township. I wish I would have brought one with me. What it says is that the English language in Ontario is illegal. And to describe it, the unrestricted use of the English language in Ontario is illegal. It's a 4-page flyer. It costs a bloody fortune. But the people should understand. And in this flyer, when you open it up, on the inside back cover, it says, standing up for freedom of expression is not being anti-French. But I'm called a bigot, and I'm called a racist, and a francophobe, and why? I don't want to take away these people's rights to live in their language. 96% of the population pays basically 96% of the taxes, so a lot of the French services that are available to the Franco-Ontarians are paid for by the majority. I don't hear anyone complaining. I had a conversation with a guy by the name of David Gordon today. He's the mayor of Kentville. And I drove all the way out to Brockville late last week to have lunch with him to discuss a resolution in his township. And he said, "We're not affected by this." I said, "Yeah, you are. Freedom of expression is everyone's concern. I want you to pass a resolution guaranteeing the rights of all people to communicate in the language of their choice. I want you to pass a resolution endorsing our constitutional Charter of Rights and Freedoms." Well, it's not a big deal here. I mean, we've already won. We're loyalists. I said, "Won what? Your kids can't get jobs in Ottawa? Your kids can't get jobs in Parliament? Your kids can't get jobs in Cornwall? There are healthcare centers that you pay for that you can't go to. English kids are kicked off of French buses. What the hell did you win?" He thought about it. I spoke to him today. He called me up. "We're going to pass the resolution," he said. Woo! Woo! Aren't you so excited? They're going to pass the resolution very quietly. In about 2 to 3 months when they redo their sign. But they don't want anyone to know because they don't want to make waves. I am going to be so upside this guy's head that he will regret the day he ever heard my name. Another coward.
Yeah.
Yes.
He says, "I would do it, but my council." Well, let me tell you about Tammy's council. They didn't want to pass this resolution either. They said this is too controversial. Actually, that's Guy Lozon's words. He wouldn't even come here. Our federal member of parliament wouldn't come here and take a stand on behalf of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Is my 2 minutes up? So, we take a look at where our mindset is. My father was wounded at Mount Cassino. He was knighted by the Queen of the Netherlands, Wilhelmina, for bravery above and beyond the call of duty. 5 years he spent marching across Europe with his band of brothers. For what? For our elected members of whether it's council, provincial government, federal government, to think that standing up for our Charter of Rights and Freedoms is too controversial. Let's keep it quiet. Let's make sure nobody knows that we have a law that enshrines our most foundational right in the world. They'll pass the bylaw. And what the mayor told me today, he said, we'll make sure that our media, our press knows about it. I'm sure everyone in Kentville is going to be really thrilled. Even though, and I'm not sure, by the way, that South Glengarry is going to pass this resolution. I don't know that. It's non-committal. I suspect they will. But I will send that same flyer out, 6,000 flyers. These flyers cost me about $3,000 a throw. That doesn't include the artwork and all the other stuff that goes into making it. But I paid for that once anyways. So now it's the mailing fees, it's the printing fees, it's the handling fees. I'll send it out anyways because I think every person who lives in South Glengarry has a right to know. They have a right to know that our politicians don't think that freedom of expression, your right to live in English or French or any other language of your choice, means anything. I'm tired. I'm really tired. I'm exhausted with this stuff. I don't want to be angry at anybody. I don't want to hate anybody. I don't want to fight with anybody. I don't want to blow every penny that Ann and I have standing up for other people's rights and freedoms. I'm exhausted. This isn't the country that my mother and my father gave to me. What the hell happened to us? I think the only thing that makes me carry on is because I don't know how to stop. How would I respect the memory of my parents if after all they've done for this country, I do nothing? My grandparents came to Canada from Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine, Romania. Those days, all the borders changed from day to day. They couldn't speak English, they couldn't speak French. They spoke a whole bunch of European languages, mind you. I wasn't going to do them much good. They weren't part of the majority culture, religion, being Jewish. But the one thing that they did, that they were sure of, they were going to raise their children to be Canadians. They wanted the freedom for their children, my parents, my aunts, my uncles, on both sides. They wanted them to have the freedom that they couldn't get in Russia. They wanted them to have the freedom to grow up, not be frightened of who you are, take your place in society, make your contribution, and raise another family. The greatest generation ever. And my generation, and the generations that are following, are not only disrespecting this, we're pissing all over it. I want to thank all of you, not for inviting me here, but for being here. It's real easy to stay home, watch TV, go to a meal with your friend. That's real easy. Coming here takes sacrifice. There's a million places I would rather be, not meaning to insult the company, but this is where I have to. I'm not finished.
No, my daughter is a teacher in Dubai on the Persian Gulf,
Yes.
and she said you could travel wherever you want. You go to any bank, and they speak to you in English first. And there at the university where she is, the American University, unless you pass your English, you don't pass your year.
You know, it's not about language. If you go to Stats Canada, and everybody tries to gin up the numbers because the bigger the numbers are of your community, the more social benefits you're going to get. In Ontario, the percentage of French speakers is about 4%. It's probably a little bit less. Some will say it's 5%. But it's really insignificant in terms of numbers when you look at the total. According to Stats Canada, because Quebec is a nation, and our Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, made that happen at the behest of Jack Layton and if I can remember his name from the Bloc Québécois, Gilles Duceppe. Yes, thank you. So they passed a law in Parliament, a real honest-to-goodness law, identifying the Quebec people as a nation. They never passed the Official Languages Act, by the way. That doesn't exist as law. It was put in place by Trudeau. It was never debated. It was never voted on. What's the Official Languages Act? None the same. But the Quebec people are officially, by law, a nation. And anyone who says that they're not separatists, well, they are. And a friend of mine, who was the last president of Alliance Quebec, said it best. It's not that Quebec wants to leave Canada. It's that Quebec wants Canada out of Quebec. And there's a big difference. Quebec can't survive without Canada. But having Canada out of Quebec, while Quebec is still within Canada, means that they still get free access to all the goodies. According to Stats Canada, if you take Quebec out of the mix, the whole province of Quebec, less than 3% of the Canadian population is French-speaking. So how does this happen? How does it happen that we're denied jobs in our own government, federally, provincially, municipally, when we're 97% of the population, taking separatist Quebec out of the mix? How does that happen? After the township of South Stormont passed a resolution, all the French papers and TV and radio were saying, it's meaningless. It means nothing. People like Ronald Kazin, who's a lawyer for Russell, said, it's only a way for Galganov to grandstand. It means nothing. For something that means nothing, they haven't shut up yet. CBC Radio Canada called me up for an interview. Said, Monsieur Galganov, vous parlez français? Oui, oui, je parle français. Pas couramment, mais je parle français. Est-ce que c'est possible de faire une interview avec vous? No. What do you mean, no? I said, I don't want to give you an interview. Why should I give you an interview? Well, so the French population can understand where you're coming from. I said, don't take this the wrong way, but I don't care if the French population understands or doesn't understand where I'm coming from. I'm not taking away their rights. They're taking away my rights. So you go and have your interviews with whomever you want. Just leave me alone. They're still talking about it. How many weeks has it been, Tammy?
I'm not quite sure. 3, 4.
3 weeks, they're still talking. But it meant nothing. Wait until South Glengarry passes the identical resolution. Now can talk about that too. We have people now who are working at this for us in Toronto. Some of you have met them. They're very dynamic. I'm going to take this thing right across Ontario. There's over 400 municipalities. We will get each municipality to sign a bylaw declaring their support for Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, vis-a-vis freedom of expression. Maybe that won't mean anything too. Thank you very much for listening.